The relay station above Caro's Drift had been quiet for 300 years. Not silent. Space was never silent, but inactive. No traffic lanes crossed this region. No trade routes. No military patrols. It was a dead zone, officially marked on galactic maps with a gray border and a warning tag. Unstable. Do not monitor. The species that once lived here were gone. Their fleets erased. Their planets cracked or burned clean. The war that ended them was ancient, unfinished, and never fully understood. That was why the first alarm was ignored. A junior sensor technician noticed a flicker in the deep band array. A weak pulse. Old. Dirty. Almost buried under cosmic noise. The system flagged it as background radiation and auto-muted it. Then the pulse repeated. Same frequency. Same timing. Too regular to be natural. The technician frowned and manually unmuted the channel. The sound that came through was not static. It was a voice. Cracked. Distorted. Terrified. Anyone, please, this is not a drill. We are being hunted. Systems are falling. The message was cut off. The room froze. No one spoke. No one moved. Every being in the relay chamber stared at the display as if it might explode. Caro's Drift was not supposed to transmit anything. The region had been dead longer than most species had written history. The supervisor stepped forward slowly. His tendrils stiffened in a sign of unease. "Replay it," he said. The message played again. Same voice. Same fear. Same final silence. The station's ancient translation core finished parsing the signal and displayed its origin. Source: Caro's Drift. Inner system status: active. That word, active, sent a ripple of fear through the chamber. Impossible. Within minutes, emergency channels lit up. Senior analysts were summoned. Military observers arrived. The relay station, forgotten for centuries, became the most important location in the sector. They amplified the signal. What they uncovered was worse. The message was not a single distress call. It was one of hundreds, layered beneath each other, compressed and staggered to bypass interference. Different voices. Different species. Some were crying. Some shouting orders. Some whispering prayers to gods long abandoned. Entire civilizations were screaming at once. And all of them said the same thing. Something was coming. Charts updated in real time as data poured in. Systems that had gone dark weeks ago. Fleets that vanished mid-jump. Defense grids that activated and then fell silent forever. No battle footage. No debris fields. No survivors. Just absence. The relay station forwarded everything to the Galactic Council. The response was immediate panic. Within hours, the high chamber filled beyond capacity. Delegates argued over each other, voices overlapping, translators lagging behind emotion. "This is an echo," one representative insisted. "Old signals bouncing back. Nothing more." "Then explain the live star maps," another snapped. "Explain why 4 systems went dark today." Military commanders demanded mobilization. Economists screamed about evacuation routes. Religious delegates fell to their knees, calling it a punishment cycle. In the center of the chamber, the Grand Archivist stood in silence. She had not spoken in decades. When she finally raised her hand, the chamber quieted. "There is one option left," she said calmly. Several delegates stiffened. Others recoiled. "No," someone said immediately. "That name is forbidden." "They were erased," another added. "By law. By history." The archivist's eyes hardened. "They erased themselves," she corrected. "And we helped." A single word appeared in the chamber's shared display. Old. Redacted. Buried under layers of classification. Humanity. The chamber erupted again. Deathworlders. Savages. Unstable. Brilliant. Uncontrollable. They came from a planet with crushing gravity, violent weather, constant tectonic instability, and predators that hunted in packs. They evolved not to survive, but to fight. When humanity reached the stars, they learned too fast, adapted too quickly, fought too effectively. They refused restrictions, rejected oversight, questioned the Council's authority. So the galaxy isolated them. Trade embargoes, tech bans, political pressure. Humans did not fight back. They simply left. They pulled their fleets home, sealed their borders, and vanished into the dark. Over generations, records were erased. Maps were edited. Children were taught humanity never mattered. The archivist looked around the chamber. "They prepared for something," she said quietly. "Something like this." A military delegate slammed a limb against the floor. And if they ignore us? They won't, the archivist replied. How can you be sure? She gestured toward the spreading voids on the star map. Because this threat doesn't stop at borders. And humans plan for worst-case scenarios. Silence followed. Then the council voted. Not unanimously, not proudly, but desperately. The SOS was rewritten, stripped of politics, stripped of pride. No demands, no authority, no conditions. Only the truth, only fear. Only one final line added at the end, against protocol. We were wrong. The signal was transmitted. It crossed dead zones, slipped through ancient relay chains, past regions where no modern ship dared travel. It reached human space. Nothing happened. For 7 minutes, the council waited. For 13 minutes, panic grew. Then the human response arrived. Not a speech, not a negotiation, not a plea. A simple system acknowledgement. Message received. The signal was stamped with a timestamp so precise it bypassed council clocks entirely. Moments later, another message followed. Short, cold, perfectly translated. Do not send further transmissions. Clear all active combat zones. Humanity is inbound. Across the galaxy, long-dormant sensors spiked. Massive energy signatures bloomed in regions once marked empty. Something old had awakened, and it was moving with purpose. Far from the council, deep inside human-controlled space, vast shipyards powered up in silence. Crews moved without ceremony. No cheers, no fear, only readiness. A human commander stood before a tactical display showing spreading darkness across the stars. He did not ask if action was authorized. He did not ask how many would die. He issued one order. Begin response. And somewhere in the void, the ancient enemy learned a terrible truth. The galaxy had sent an SOS. Deathworlders had answered. The first human fleet did not arrive in a blaze of light. It arrived in silence. No warning flares. No broadcast declarations. No ceremonial formations like the fleets of the Galactic Council preferred. Human ships exited jump space already in combat alignment. Engines dimmed, weapons cold but ready. Alien sensors struggled to track them. Not because the ships were hidden, but because their movement patterns made no sense. They drifted when logic demanded acceleration. They accelerated when gravity should have torn them apart. Every maneuver violated known naval doctrine. Observers aboard nearby alien stations watched in uneasy silence. These are not warships, one analyst whispered. They are, another replied. They just aren't built for our wars. The lead human vessel was massive, scarred, and asymmetrical. Layers of armor overlapped like plates grown rather than manufactured. Sections bore visible repair marks. Old, brutal, functional. This was not a fleet polished for display. This was a fleet that had survived things no one else had. The first battle did not happen where the council expected. Instead of charging directly toward the spreading voids, the human fleet split into precise task groups. Some moved toward darkened systems. Others turned away, deeper into unexplored space. The alien command channels erupted in confusion. They're going the wrong way. They're abandoning the front. No, a veteran tactician said quietly. They're hunting. Inside the human flagship, the atmosphere was calm to the point of discomfort. There were no speeches, no emotional outbursts. Crews moved with practiced speed, speaking only when necessary. Tactical displays showed layered predictions, future movements, enemy adaptations, probability, curves stretching days ahead. A young officer hesitated near the central console. Sir, she said carefully, council observers are requesting clarification. They believe our fleet is out of position, the commander finished. Yes, they always do. He did not look away from the display. They think in straight lines. The enemy doesn't. The first confirmation arrived minutes later. One of the human scouting groups reached a system that had gone dark only hours earlier. The local star still burned, but everything around it was wrong. Defense platforms were intact, but lifeless. Cities floated in orbit, undamaged and empty. No bodies. No signs of evacuation. No evidence of struggle. Just absence. Human sensors dug deeper than alien tech ever dared. They scanned gravitational echoes, quantum distortions, traces left behind by things that moved through space rather than across it. The data fed into the central command net. The enemy was not conquering systems. It was harvesting them. Pattern confirmed, an analyst reported. They don't destroy infrastructure. They removed biological presence entirely. Why? Another officer asked. The answer appeared on the display before anyone spoke. Energy readings. The enemy fed on complex life, neural activity, emotional variance. Entire civilizations reduced to fuel. The room grew colder. This isn't an invasion, the young officer said. It's a feeding cycle. The commander nodded once. That's why it came back, he said. And why did it wait? Across the galaxy, alien fleets began to panic. Reports flooded in. Defensive lines collapsed faster than expected. Ships vanished without firing a shot. Commanders described enemy vessels that ignored shields, phased through armor, and rewrote local physics. Several species attempted surrender broadcasts. None were answered. The Council begged humanity to take command. Humanity refused. We will not lead your fleets, their response stated. We will not coordinate your battles. The message continued. Follow our exclusion zones. Do not pursue targets we mark. If you interfere, we will not stop to save you. The bluntness shocked the Council. Some called it cruelty. Others recognized it for what it was, honesty. Human strike groups began their work in earnest. They did not fight large engagements unless necessary. Instead, they cut enemy supply flows, collapsed transit corridors, and detonated stars that had already been lost. Alien commanders watched in horror as humans sacrificed entire systems without hesitation. Those worlds were still viable, one shouted over comms. They were already dead, a human officer replied. You just hadn't accepted it yet. Then came the first human loss. A forward assault ship failed to exit jump space. Its last transmission showed enemy vessels adapting mid-engagement, learning, shifting, improving faster than predicted. The ship detonated to prevent capture. The human response was immediate. Not grief. Adjustment. Tactics updated. Weapon frequencies shifted. Fleet formations altered across thousands of ships within seconds. Alien analysts stared in disbelief. They're evolving during the war. No. An archivist corrected softly. They planned for this version already. The enemy noticed too. For the first time, it reacted directly to humanity. A massive concentration of hostile vessels emerged near a densely populated alien core system. One too valuable to lose, too symbolic to abandon. The Council pleaded. Please, they begged. You must defend it. The human command reviewed the data. Projected casualties, catastrophic. Probability of long-term success, low. The commander stared at the numbers. Then he gave a new order. Evacuate what you can, he said. We'll buy time. What about the system? The young officer asked. He did not answer immediately. When he did, his voice was steady. We're not here to save worlds, he said. We're here to end the threat. The human fleet moved to intercept. The battle that followed shattered every alien concept of warfare. Human ships charged directly into enemy formations, using kinetic weapons designed to function inside distorted space. They detonated antimatter warheads at point-blank range, knowing their own shields would fail seconds later. Some ships never intended to survive. They existed to deliver a payload, disrupt a node, and collapse a corridor. Alien crews watched human vessels burn and still keep firing. The system was evacuated. The enemy advance slowed. But it did not stop. After the battle, the human fleet regrouped. Casualties were heavy. The young officer finally asked the question everyone was thinking. Sir, how long can we keep this up? The commander turned away from the display. Not long, he said, and the enemy knows it. A new data stream appeared. Deep scans revealed something buried beneath the conflict. A central intelligence. Ancient. Immense. Anchored beyond normal space. Destroying fleets would not end the war. Only reaching that core would. And reaching it would require something no other species would ever consider. The commander closed his eyes briefly. Prepare Phase 2, he said. What is Phase 2? The officer asked. The commander opened his eyes. The part where we stop pretending this is a war we can all survive. The stars outside the viewport dimmed as human fleets adjusted course. Not toward the enemy's armies, but toward its heart. And somewhere deep in the void, the ancient threat began to understand something it never had before. Humans were not trying to win. They were preparing to sacrifice. The enemy adjusted faster than expected. That alone would have terrified most civilizations. For humans, it only confirmed old assumptions. Across the conflict zone, enemy formations began changing shape mid-encounter. Vessels split, merged, and reassembled in ways that broke predictive models. Attacks that once failed now pierced human defenses. Safe corridors became death traps within minutes. Alien fleets broke. Some fled without orders. Others froze, unable to process how quickly the balance was shifting. Entire task forces vanished after pursuing what looked like retreating targets. Human fleets did not retreat. They folded. To alien observers, it looked like chaos. Human ships scattered, pulling back from key engagements, abandoning positions they had fought brutally to hold only hours before. Council command erupted. They're losing ground. They're abandoning the line. This is a collapse. Inside the human command network, no one raised their voice. The tactical map updated continuously, showing layered projections far beyond alien perception. Where others saw loss, humans saw compression, forcing the enemy into predictable corridors. The commander watched calmly. "They're probing our limits," the young officer said. "Yes," he replied, "and they think they've found one." The enemy pushed hard. For the first time, it struck directly at a human-controlled system. Not an outpost, not a monitoring station, a colony. The system was young, only 2 generations old. A fragile chain of habitats orbiting a harsh star. The population was small, but growing. Families, children. Infrastructure is still under construction. Alien commanders panicked. "This changes everything," one council delegate said. "They're testing humanity's restraint." Emergency signals flooded the human network. Evacuation was possible, but not total. There was not enough time. The young officer turned to the commander. "Sir," she said carefully, "if we abandon the system." "We won't," he said. She hesitated. "If we defend it, we risk exposing." "I know." The commander looked at the colony's image on the display. Rotating habitats. Small lights flickering against the dark. Humans had not built many worlds outside their home territory. Each one mattered. "Deploy shield groups," he ordered. "Civilian priority." Alien observers leaned forward as human fleets moved, not away, but directly into the enemy advance. What followed was unlike any battle before it. Human ships formed tight defensive lattices around civilian structures, using their own hulls as barriers. They absorbed fire meant to annihilate entire habitats. Several vessels went dark within minutes. Enemy units pressed harder, adapting in real time. Human losses climbed. The council watched in growing horror. "They're bleeding themselves dry," someone whispered. Inside one habitat, evacuation sirens wailed. Civilians crowded into transports, watching the battle through reinforced viewports. They saw human ships explode, saw debris scatter like burning snow. A child asked why the ships did not retreat. The answer came from a broadcast piped directly into the station. A human voice. "Calm. Steady. Because you are behind us." The defense held. Barely. When the last civilian transport jumped away, the commander issued a new order. "Collapse the perimeter." "What about our ships?" the officer asked. "They've already served their purpose." Human vessels detonated their cores in sequence, turning space into a storm of lethal debris. The enemy advance fractured, losing cohesion as its formations were shredded by uncontrolled physics. The colony was saved. The cost was severe. Silence followed the battle. Human casualty lists scrolled across command displays. Names. Ships. Entire crews were marked lost. No speeches followed. No mourning rituals. Just quiet recalibration. That was when the enemy did something unexpected. It paused. Across multiple fronts, enemy units slowed their advance. New formations gathered, not around targets, but around something deeper. Human sensors picked it up first. A structural shift. The enemy was reorganizing not for expansion, but for resistance. "It's learned," the young officer said. "It knows we won't abandon civilians." "Yes," the commander replied. "And now it knows where we hesitate." The room felt heavier. Humans had rules. Hard ones. Lines drawn long ago after wars that nearly destroyed them. They did not use certain weapons near populated systems. They did not weaponize stars unless extinction was guaranteed. They did not sacrifice civilians, even alien ones, for speed. The enemy had identified that restraint, and it was moving to exploit it. Deep scans revealed the truth. The enemy's central intelligence was spreading fragments of itself into living systems, embedding within planetary biospheres, using life as armor. If humans attacked directly, entire worlds would die. Alien delegates panicked. They're hiding behind us, one screamed. You have to stop them. Human command went silent. The commander stared at the data longer than necessary. What are our options? The young officer asked quietly. There are none that are clean, he replied. A new council message arrived, urgent, desperate. You must act immediately. Authorize extreme measures. We accept the consequences. The commander closed the message without replying. Humanity did not fight wars by committee. He turned to the room. Open the Black Archive. Several officers stiffened. That's restricted, one said. Even to us. It won't be in a minute, the commander replied. The archive opened. Schematics filled the display, concepts never shared with the galaxy. Weapons never deployed. Contingencies designed not to win wars, but to end eras. The young officer swallowed. Those are extinction-level responses. Yes. You said we would only use them if survival itself was at risk. The commander nodded. It is. The enemy was not just killing civilizations. It was forcing humanity toward a choice it had sworn never to make again. Attack, and become monsters in the galaxy's memory. Or hesitate, and allow extinction to spread. The commander activated a private channel. Send this to all human fleet commanders, he said. No council copies. The message was short. Rules of engagement are changing. Civilian shields are no longer guaranteed. You may disengage if you cannot comply. Several fleet pings vanished immediately, ships choosing to withdraw rather than cross that line. No judgment followed. Those who remained sent simple acknowledgments. The young officer looked at the commander. Sir, once we do this, there's no apology that fixes it, he said. I know. Outside, human fleets shifted formation again. Not defensive, not evasive, purposeful. Across the galaxy, sensors spiked as energy levels rose beyond anything previously recorded. The enemy surged forward, confident it had humanity trapped. For the first time since the war began, the commander allowed himself a grim smile. They think they've broken us, he said. The stars began to dim. Not from destruction, from something far worse preparing to happen. And in the dark between systems, the ancient enemy finally realized the mistake it had made. It had forced Deathworlders to stop holding back. The galaxy felt it before it understood it. Across dozens of sectors, long-range sensors registered a change that had nothing to do with ships or weapons fire. Space itself began to behave differently. Communications lagged. Navigation solutions lost accuracy. Even stars appeared slightly dimmer, as if something unseen was drinking from the background of reality. Alien scientists panicked. This isn't energy discharge, one reported. It's absence. Something is being removed. The council demanded answers from humanity. None came. Inside human command space, the atmosphere had changed. The quiet efficiency was still there, but beneath it ran something heavier. Officers spoke less. Movements were precise, almost ritualistic. The young officer noticed it first. They're all veterans, she said quietly, watching senior crew members at their stations. Not just of this war. Of something else. The commander nodded. This isn't new, he said. That's what scares them. He brought up a file marked with a symbol no alien archive had ever recorded. Not a weapon designation. Not a project name. A warning. This was built after our first extinction war, he said. Before we met the galaxy. Before we trusted anyone. The display shifted. What appeared was not a ship. It was a field. A layered construct of controlled void, anchored by artificial singularities and stabilized by technology so old it predated most alien civilizations. It did not explode. It did not burn. It was erased. Localized reality collapses, the young officer whispered. Yes, the commander said. We call it a null zone. The enemy had embedded itself inside living systems to protect its core intelligence. Humanity's new solution did not target ships, cities, or even planets. It targeted the space between them. The first test deployment was not announced. A human task group moved toward a contaminated system, one already declared lost by the Council. Billions gone. No evacuation possible. No hope of recovery. Alien observers screamed for confirmation. Is this a strike? Is this a weapon test? The human command sent one message. Observe. Do not approach. The task group deployed a lattice of emitters around the system's primary star. They did not fire. They did not maneuver aggressively. They waited. Then the null zone activated. There was no flash, no shockwave. The system simply stopped. The star froze mid-fusion. Light bent inward and failed to escape. Enemy vessels caught within the field did not explode or retreat. They vanished, not destroyed, removed. Sensors showed a growing emptiness where mass, energy, and information had once existed. A perfect absence spreading outward at a controlled rate. The null zone collapsed after exactly 3 minutes. What remained was a hollow system. No star, no planets, no debris, just dark. The enemy presence in surrounding sectors faltered immediately. Coordination broke. Attacks became erratic. The ancient intelligence had felt the loss. Human analysts confirmed it within seconds. "We severed a major node," one reported. "It didn't anticipate this." Alien reactions were immediate and terrified. "You erased an entire system," a council delegate shouted. "That violates every." The transmission cut off. Human command had stopped listening. The commander stared at the aftermath feed. His expression did not change, but his voice lowered. "That was the smallest version," he said. The young officer swallowed. "How many of those can we deploy?" The commander paused. "Enough to end the war," he said. "Or enough to make us the last thing anyone remembers." The enemy adapted again, but slower this time. Its remaining fleets pulled back from dense population centers, abandoning the shield of living worlds. It began consolidating near its core, drawing strength inward. Human intelligence confirmed what they already feared. The core was working fully now. A consciousness older than most stars. A predator that had fed on cycles of life across galaxies. It had survived before by waiting out its enemies. This time, it had misjudged one. It reached out, not with weapons, but with communication. Every species heard it at once. A pressure in the mind. A voice without sound. "You will end yourselves if you continue. You are too young to understand what you unleash." Panic spread across the council worlds. Religious leaders declared omens. Fleets hesitated, fearing retaliation. Human response was immediate. They cut the psychic channel entirely. Inside human space, the commander addressed his fleet commanders for the first time since the war began. "This enemy believes fear will stop us," he said. "It believes survival means hesitation." He let the words settle. "We evolved in a world that punished hesitation with death." New orders propagated. Human fleets repositioned, forming vast geometries around enemy territory. Not encirclement. Containment. Alien commanders watched in disbelief as humans began deploying null zones not as weapons, but as barriers. Entire regions of space were sealed off, isolating the enemy from resources, escape routes, and prey. The galaxy began to feel smaller. Safe corridors vanished. Trade lanes collapsed. Navigation maps had to be rewritten in real time. Entire species protested. "You're strangling us," they accused. The human command replied with a single statement. "This is temporary. Extinction is permanent." Inside the human flagship, the young officer finally broke. "Sir," she said, voice tight, "we're changing the galaxy. Even if we win, it won't go back." The commander looked at her. "I know. Then why keep going?" He turned the display toward her. It showed projected futures. Hundreds of them. Branching paths. In most cases, the enemy escaped to return centuries later. In others, humanity hesitated and the galaxy died. Only a few ended with survival. All of those had one thing in common. Humanity crossed the line. "We don't do this because it's right," the commander said quietly. "We do it because we are the only ones who can." The enemy launched a counteroffensive, its largest yet. Thousands of vessels surged toward the containment fields, attacking null zone anchors directly. Human fleets did not retreat. They advanced. The battle was unlike anything before. Regions of space collapsed and reformed as human and enemy technologies clashed at the edge of reality itself. Ships disappeared mid-maneuver. Entire formations ceased to exist without warning. Human losses were catastrophic. And still, they advanced. Alien observers began to understand the truth. Humanity was not fighting to preserve itself. It was fighting to ensure the enemy would never exist again, even if that meant becoming something the galaxy would fear forever. As the enemy's core defenses weakened, deep scans revealed the final truth. The core intelligence was not a single entity. It was a collective. Billions of consumed minds, screaming in unison, held together by an ancient framework. Destroying it would release unimaginable energy, enough to fracture space across multiple sectors. The young officer stared at the projection. That will kill everything nearby, she said. Yes, the commander replied. Including our fleets. Yes. She was silent for a long moment. Will anyone remember why we did this? The commander didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was steady. They'll remember that they're alive, he said. That has to be enough. Human fleets moved into final positions. The galaxy held its breath. The next order would not decide a battle. It would decide what kind of monsters humanity was willing to be, so that no one else ever had to face this again. Human fleets reached the edge of the core exclusion zone and stopped. Not because they were blocked, because this was as far as planning could go. Beyond this point, probability collapsed. Simulations contradicted each other. Every model ended the same way, but the paths to that ending diverged wildly. Some showed brief survival. Others showed none. All showed the enemy's core destroyed. All showed human fleets erased. The commander stood alone in the observation chamber, staring at the impossible structure forming at the center of the containment zone. The enemy's core was no longer hiding. It had unfolded. It was vast, larger than moons, layered with shifting geometry, built from materials that did not reflect light properly. Streams of captured energy flowed through it like veins. Echoes of consumed minds pulsed faintly across sensor arrays, screaming without sound. Alien observers struggled to comprehend it. This isn't a command center, one whispered over a council channel. It's a grave. Human analysts confirmed the truth. The enemy was not alive in the way others were. It was an archive of extinction. Every species it consumed became part of it. Every fear, every instinct, every last moment of resistance stored and repurposed. It was learned not through theory, but through murder. The commander activated a closed human-only channel. All fleets, he said. This is the final confirmation. No flourish. No drama. We are proceeding. Silence followed. Not hesitation, but acceptance. Then fleet commanders responded one by one. Acknowledged. Standing by. Weapons armed. No further questions. The young officer stood behind him, hands clenched. Sir, she said quietly, we've received council traffic. They're demanding a ceasefire. He did not turn. They finally understand, she continued. They know what this will do. Yes, he said. That's why it won't stop us. The council's message played anyway, overriding protocol. You cannot do this, a delegate pleaded. You'll fracture entire regions of space. Billions more will die in the aftermath. Trade lanes will collapse. Star systems will destabilize. The galaxy will. The commander muted the channel. They're thinking in terms of recovery, he said. We're thinking in terms of survival. Humanity had always understood something the galaxy never fully accepted. Some threats did not end cleanly. Some victories poisoned the future. But leaving the threat alive poisoned everything. The final weapon was not a bomb. It was not a beam. It was a convergence. Human fleets repositioned, forming a massive, three-dimensional lattice around the enemy core. Each ship carried a modified null zone anchor, overloaded, unstable, designed for one use only. Alien analysts watched in horror as the pattern formed. They're not targeting the core, one said. They're collapsing around it. Yes, another whispered. They're isolating reality itself. The young officer's voice shook. This isn't containment. No, the commander replied. This is amputation. He opened a new channel. All personnel, he said, voice carrying across thousands of ships. This is the final transmission you will receive from command. The fleet went silent. There will be no extraction, no rescue, no second activation. Several junior officers closed their eyes. Some whispered farewells to no one in particular. We are not here to be remembered, the commander continued. We are here to ensure there is a future that can remember anything at all. The enemy reacted. For the first time, it showed something like fear. Its surface shifted violently. Energy spikes surged outward. Entire sections of the containment field buckled as the enemy attempted to break free. It reached out again, not with psychic dominance this time, but with understanding. It spoke directly to human minds. You will die with me. Your species will fade into my records. You will not be special. The commander felt the pressure behind his eyes, the weight of billions of stolen deaths pressing against his thoughts. He did not respond. Instead, he issued the final order. Execute convergence. Human ships activated their anchors. One by one, controlled void fields bloomed outward, overlapping and intersecting. Space twisted. Light failed. Time measurements became meaningless. Alien sensors screamed and then went blind. Inside the field, human ships began to vanish. Not exploding, not breaking apart, but being pulled into a collapsing absence they themselves had created. The young officer watched the fleet disappear in layers. "Sir," she said softly, "fleet integrity is failing across all vectors. I know. Casualties are approaching total loss. I know." She swallowed. "There's no confirmation signal." "There won't be." Outside the containment zone, alien fleets fled in terror as gravitational waves rippled outward. Entire star systems shuddered. Some suns flared violently. Others dimmed permanently. The galaxy was being reshaped. Inside the collapsing convergence, the enemy core screamed, not in sound, but in data. Its internal structure unraveled as the reality framework holding it together failed. Billions of stolen minds were released, not freed, but erased. The enemy did not die. It ceased to have ever been able to exist. The convergence reached critical mass. The commander felt the ship tremble. The young officer steadied herself against the console. "Sir," she said, voice breaking, "it's been an honor." He finally turned to look at her. "Make sure this reaches them," he said, handing her a sealed data shard. She stared. "I thought you said there would be no extraction." "There won't be," he replied. "For most of us." Before she could respond, the deck shifted violently. Emergency protocols activated automatically. A small, heavily shielded courier pod detached from the flagship. Never meant for combat, never meant to survive proximity to this event. It carried one thing: the truth. The young officer was thrown forward as the pod launched, tearing away from the dying ship. Through the viewport, she saw the flagship consumed by folding darkness. The commander was still standing at the center of the bridge when the signal cut. The convergence collapsed. The enemy was gone. So was the human fleet. Across the galaxy, sensors slowly came back online. Where the core had been, there was nothing, not even empty space. Just an unreachable void where physics refused to operate. The war was over. No victory signal was sent. No celebration followed. Alien worlds reeled as they began counting losses, not just from the war, but from the aftermath of reality itself being scarred. Weeks later, the courier pod emerged from jump space near a neutral council station. Its automated beacon activated. Human data package, priority, Omega. Inside, the young officer was unconscious but alive. The galaxy would hear the truth, but the ones who had carried it this far were already gone. The galaxy did not celebrate. There were no victory broadcasts, no banners, no songs, no public relief ceremonies. The war had ended too abruptly, too absolutely, to feel real. One moment, extinction had been advancing across the stars. The next, it was simply gone. Where the enemy's core had existed, there was now a wound in reality. Sensors refused to read it. Probes vanished without data. Physics itself avoided the region, bending subtly around an absence that should not have been possible. Astrophysicists called it the scar. Priests called it a warning. Most civilians did not speak of it at all. Trade lanes near the scar collapsed permanently. Some stars destabilized weeks later, flaring violently or dimming beyond recovery. Entire sectors were reclassified as hazardous, their borders marked with symbols older than any living language. The galaxy had survived, but it had been changed. The courier pod drifted for days before it was found. It emerged near a neutral council station on minimal power, its hull scorched and cracked, its automated beacon pulsing weakly. Docking crews approached with caution, scanning for traps, contagions, anything. They found none. Inside the pod was a single human officer. Alive. Barely. Medical teams worked in silence as they stabilized her. Radiation burns. Neural overload. Severe trauma. Her vitals were erratic. Her brain activity uneven, as if parts of her mind were still listening for something that no longer existed. When she finally opened her eyes, the room was quiet. No alarms. No crowds. Only a single council observer standing behind a transparent barrier, watching her with a mixture of awe and fear. She tried to speak. Her throat was dry. Her voice barely worked. "Did it work?" she asked. The observer hesitated. "Yes." they said finally. The enemy is gone. She closed her eyes. For a long moment, no one spoke. When she opened them again, the first thing she asked was not about survival, or rewards, or thanks. How many ships made it out? The observer looked away. She already knew the answer. The data shard was removed from her possession and isolated under the highest security protocols the Council had. It was not decrypted immediately. Some delegates argued it should never be opened at all. It may destabilize public order, one warned. It may expose methods that should not exist, another added. The archivist, older now, her posture bent but her eyes sharp, overruled them all. They died to make sure we knew, she said. If we bury this, then we learn nothing. The shard was opened. What followed was not a triumphant record. It was a confession. The message began without ceremony. No music, no flags, just the commander's voice, calm and unadorned, recorded hours before the convergence. He explained everything. The nature of the enemy. The inevitability of escalation. The moment humanity realized restraint would be used against them. The weapon humanity swore never to use again, and why they used it anyway. He did not justify the choice. He explained it. We did not save you because we are better, the recording said. We saved you because we were willing to do what you could not. Images followed. Tactical projections. Probability trees. Futures where humanity refused to act, where the enemy spread slowly but endlessly, where civilizations fell one by one. Then came the hardest part. Human casualty reports. Not numbers. Names. Ship designations. Crew manifests. Entire fleets listed as irrecoverable. The council chamber fell into absolute silence. Several delegates wept openly. Others stared at the displays, unmoving. A few turned away, unable to watch any longer. The recording ended with the commander's final words. We are not heroes, he said. We are the last line you never wanted to cross. The chamber remained silent long after the display went dark. The truth spread slowly at first. The council attempted to control the release, fearing panic, backlash, blame. But information has its own gravity. It leaked. Then it flooded. Civilian populations across the galaxy learned what had been done for them, and who had paid the price. There was outrage. You erased systems. You damaged reality itself. You had no right. There was fear. If they can do this once, they can do it again. If we anger them. And there was something else, quieter but heavier. Grief. Entire species began holding memorials, not for their own dead, but for humans they had never met. Names that meant nothing to them, read aloud anyway. Some worlds erected monuments in empty plazas. Others observed moments of silence that lasted an entire rotation. No human embassies accepted the gestures. There were none left to receive them. The surviving officer, now recovered enough to walk, was invited to address the council. She declined. Instead, she requested access to long-range sensors near the scar. She stood alone in the observation deck, staring at the impossible absence where the enemy and the human fleet had vanished together. The archivist joined her quietly. They call you a savior, the archivist said. The officer did not react. They call your people monsters, the archivist added. Still nothing. Do either of those feel true to you? The officer finally spoke. We didn't go there to be remembered, she said. And we didn't go there to be feared. She turned. We went because no one else could. The archivist nodded slowly. Human space is silent, she said. No signals. No response to hails. No patrols. The officer already knew. Humanity had not simply lost fleets. It had lost command, leadership, infrastructure. The convergence had taken nearly everything with it. What happens now? The archivist asked. The officer looked back at the scar. Now, she said, you learn to live without us. The council attempted to send aid missions toward former human territories. Most were turned back by automated defenses still active, ancient and unresponsive to alien codes. A few ships that pushed deeper vanished without explanation. Human space had sealed itself, whether intentionally or by consequence, no one could tell. Weeks passed, then months. The galaxy stabilized slowly, painfully. Trade routes were rewritten, borders redrawn. Entire doctrines changed. New laws were passed. Some were simple. No species may suppress another's history. No extinction-level threat may be ignored for political convenience. No civilization may be isolated until it becomes a myth. and one law stood above all others, carved into council charter and repeated to every generation. If humanity ever sends a warning, listen. The officer never returned to human space. She remained as a witness, a living reminder of a species that answered when the galaxy screamed and vanished when the screaming stopped. Sometimes, late in the station's artificial night, she thought she heard something. A faint echo, not a voice, not a signal, just a pressure, like footsteps passing beyond the edge of hearing. Humanity was gone, but the galaxy could not shake the feeling that it was still being watched. Not as rulers, not as saviors, but as something far older than gratitude. Something that had already paid the price, and would not do so again. Time did not heal the galaxy. It only made the wound quieter. Years passed after the war, then decades. New generations grew up under altered star maps, learning navigation routes that curved around places where space itself refused to behave. Teachers explained the scar using simplified diagrams, careful words, and long pauses. This is where the war ended, they said. This is where humanity stopped the dark. They never said what it cost. Not fully. At first, humanity was honored. Statues rose on capital worlds, abstract shapes meant to represent sacrifice without showing faces. Memorial days were declared. Council speeches spoke of unity, of lessons learned, of vigilance. But memory decays faster than stone. As decades passed, gratitude softened into distance. Distance hardened into discomfort. Humans were no longer present to contradict stories told about them. And stories began to change. Some claimed humanity had planned the war, that they had known the enemy would return and allowed it to spread just enough to justify their weapons. Others whispered that humans enjoyed the destruction, that Deathworlders had always been waiting for an excuse to unleash forbidden power. A few went further. They didn't save us, certain commentators argued. They took control, then vanished before we could stop them. Humanity became a paradox. Saviors who broke reality. Heroes who refused thanks. Monsters who died quietly. The Council tried to stabilize the narrative. Official archives recorded humanity's actions accurately, painfully, in full detail. But few civilians read archives. Most preferred summaries, simplifications, stories that made sense. And the truth about humans did not make sense. The scar remained. Exploration probes continued to fail. Even unmanned drones disappeared at its edge, erased so cleanly that no debris or signal echo remained. Entire research divisions devoted their existence to understanding it. None succeeded. The scar did not expand. It did not shrink. It simply was. A reminder that something had been removed so completely that reality itself still noticed. Near its borders, strange things happened. Stars flickered out of sequence. Navigation instruments lagged. Crew members reported a sensation of being watched, not by sensors, not by minds, but by something patient. Most reports were dismissed as stress responses. Most. Then came the first rumor. A trade vessel traveling along a newly charted detour reported encountering a derelict ship far beyond any known wreck site. The hull was human. Old. Scarred. The crew swore the ship was powered down, drifting without life support. They also swore it vanished when they tried to approach. No wreckage was found. The report was classified and quietly buried. Then came another. An automated mining platform near a dead system logged a brief anomaly. Engine signatures matching ancient human fleet profiles. The data lasted only seconds before self-corrupting. Analysts argued it was a residual echo. No one could prove otherwise. The surviving human officer heard none of this directly. She lived on a remote council station now, far from political centers. She had refused titles, refused pensions, refused symbolic authority. She worked instead as an advisor. Not on weapons, on restraint. When conflicts escalated, when younger species demanded rapid militarization, when councils argued for preemptive strikes, her voice carried weight. "We thought we were prepared once," she would say. "We weren't." She never spoke about the commander, never spoke about the convergence. But when discussions turned careless, when someone suggested that extinction-level solutions were sometimes necessary, she would leave the room. The message was clear enough. Humanity had crossed the line, so others wouldn't have to. Crossing it again would mean learning the same lesson, without humans to pay the cost. A century after the war, the Council passed what became known as the Black Silence Accord. No species would develop or deploy technology designed to erase reality itself. No research into null physics would continue beyond theoretical boundaries. No civilization would isolate another until it became unknown. The accord passed unanimously. Fear is an excellent unifier. Yet fear also breeds curiosity. In hidden facilities, far from council oversight, certain groups continued to study the fragments left behind. Data recovered from the convergence. Residual distortions near the scar. They told themselves they were learning for defense. They told themselves humanity had shown the way. Most of them disappeared. Their facilities went dark without explanation. Communications cut cleanly. No debris fields. No distress calls. Investigations found nothing. Just silence. Whispers began to circulate in back channels. That human defense systems were still active. Those ancient automated fleets still patrolled invisible borders. That humanity had not vanished, only stepped back. The council denied all of it. Officially, humanity was gone. Unofficially, no one acted as if that were true. Borders near former human space were respected more than any council mandate. Fleets avoided those regions without needing orders. Pirates vanished when they strayed too close. Entire criminal networks rewrote their maps around places no human voice guarded anymore. Parents told children stories at night. Not heroic ones, cautionary ones. If you see the lights change color, they whispered, turn back. If the stars go quiet, don't ask why. If you ever hear a warning in a calm human voice, listen. The galaxy adapted. Slowly, uneasily. Then, 200 years after the war, a deep space observatory near the edge of the old exclusion zone detected something impossible. A signal, not a broadcast, not a transmission, a pattern, a controlled distortion passing through the scar, brief, precise, deliberate. It lasted less than a second. The observatory flagged it automatically, ranking it below threat threshold but above cosmic anomaly. The report moved through channels, bouncing between departments, delayed by bureaucracy and doubt. By the time it reached the council, the signal was already gone. The surviving officer was summoned. She studied the data in silence. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but recognition. This isn't a message, a scientist said. It doesn't encode information. The officer nodded. They never needed to, she replied. What is it then? She looked at the projection, at the faint echo of a path passing where no path should exist. It's movement, she said. The chamber went silent. They told us they wouldn't rule, a delegate whispered. They told us they wouldn't stay. Yes, the officer said softly. They didn't say they were gone forever. No confirmation followed. No fleet appeared. No voice spoke. But from that day on, reports of strange disappearances near forbidden research sites increased. Unauthorized experiments failed catastrophically. Certain individuals simply vanished from secure facilities without alarms or breaches. The council reopened the archives. Humanity's files were reclassified, not as extinct, not as active, but as yet unknown. And for the first time since the war, the galaxy felt something close to relief. Because if the worst ever came again, if another extinction-level threat rose from the dark, there was a chance, however small, that someone was still watching, and that the galaxy would not have to scream alone. The galaxy learned to live with uncertainty. That, more than any war, changed it forever. Centuries passed. Borders stabilized. New civilizations rose, unaware that their stars once flickered under extinction's shadow. Old species faded quietly, not through violence, but through time. The scar remained unmoved, unstudied, untouched. No one challenged it anymore. Not because they were forbidden, because they were afraid of what answering it might invite. The council still existed, though it looked nothing like the chamber that once sent an SOS in desperation. It was smaller now, be more careful, less confident in its authority over a universe that had proven capable of breaking every rule it believed in. History curricula changed. Children were taught that the galaxy had survived because some species were willing to do what others could not. Humanity was no longer framed as saviors or monsters. They were taught as context. The reason certain technologies were banned. The reason borders were respected. The reason no civilization ever laughed at Deathworlders again. The surviving human officer did not live to see most of it. She died quietly on a station far from the scar, her body worn down by injuries that medicine could never fully repair. There was no grand funeral. No monument was raised in her name. At her request, her ashes were released into deep space. No coordinates recorded. The Council honored her with silence. After her death, humanity passed fully into legend. No confirmed sightings. No verified signals. No undeniable proof. Just patterns. When a rogue empire began experimenting with forbidden null physics, its research hub vanished overnight. No explosion. No warning. Just gone. The official investigation blamed containment failure. No one believed it. When a fanatic cult attempted to awaken something buried beneath a collapsed star, something that predated recorded history, the star system destabilized before their work could complete. A natural event, the report said. No one tried again. Slowly, quietly, a rule emerged across the galaxy without ever being voted on. If something feels too close to extinction, stop. Not because of law, because of consequence. Then came the incident no one could ignore. A newly spacefaring species, young, curious, brilliant, discovered something ancient at the edge of their expansion zone. An artifact embedded in the ruins of a dead system. Not enemy technology. A signal anchor. They activated it by accident. For 17 seconds, a structured pulse radiated outward, primitive, clumsy, desperate. It was not a distress call meant for the galaxy. It was aimed inward, toward the scar. Sensors across multiple sectors detected it simultaneously. Panic followed. Council emergency sessions convened for the first time in generations. Archivists dusted off protocols no one expected to use again. The artifact's signal ceased. Nothing else happened. For days, the galaxy waited. Weeks passed. Some claimed it proved humanity was gone for good. Others said the silence was worse. On the 43rd day, something changed. Not at the scar, but far beyond it. At the very edge of mapped space, where navigation charts dissolved into probability and theory, a long-dormant array powered on. The array was old. Human-made. Its systems had not been transmitted in over 1,000 years. Yet now, without fanfare or announcement, it activated a single function. Observation. No broadcasts followed. No fleets emerged. But across deep space, subtle adjustments occurred. Gravitational currents shifted. Hyperspace corridors realigned. Background radiation patterns smoothed in ways only long-term manipulation could achieve. The young species that activated the artifact never realized what they had touched. They simply noticed the anomaly they uncovered was no longer there. Their system stabilized. Their skies grew calm again. They chalked it up to coincidence. Far away, in places no alien sensor could penetrate, ancient human constructs adjusted parameters and returned to dormancy. Whatever humanity had become, it no longer needed command. It had become infrastructure. The galaxy moved on. Another century passed. Then another. The story of the SOS became something historians debated late into academic careers. Some argued humanity never truly existed as described, that the war had been exaggerated, mythologized. Others pointed to the scar and said nothing that breaks reality so cleanly is born from fiction. The debate never ended, until the final proof arrived. It did not come as a message. It came as a correction. In a distant sector, a star began collapsing in a way that defied all known models. Not naturally, not violently, deliberately. Its gravitational profile shifted with precision. Energy was siphoned, not lost. The collapse halted just before the supernova, frozen in a stable but impossible state. Sensors across the galaxy lit up. This was not survival. This was an intervention. The Council scrambled to respond, to identify the cause, to locate the responsible force. Before they could, every active channel received the same data packet. No voice, no image, no signature, just text. Threat contained. No action required. The packet carried no origin point, but its encryption matched something buried deep in forbidden archives. Humans. The Council chamber was silent. Not in fear, in understanding. Humanity had never promised to return. They had never promised to protect. They had never promised anything at all. They had simply answered once, when the galaxy screamed. Now, they act only when necessary. No recognition. No gratitude. No authority. Just ruthless precision. The archives were updated one final time. Humanity's status was changed again. Not extinct. Not active. Not unknown. A new classification was added. Last resort. And beneath it, A single line was carved into a permanent record, never to be erased, never to be softened. If humans act, it means every other option has already failed. Far beyond the scar, something ancient powered down. Stars burned on. Civilizations slept safely, unaware of how close they came to ending. And somewhere in the deep, quiet dark, where no empire ruled and no council voted, humanity watched. Not as gods, not as guardians, but as the species that learned, long ago, how to do what must be done, and then disappear again.